Hello, everybody. Domain-driven design is something that is mentioned a lot. And to learn a little bit more about what you can do with it, how it helps you, how you can get from domain-driven design to results pretty quickly, today we say hello to Annegret Junker, who's a chief software architect at Codecentric. Annegret, thanks for joining.
Oh, thank you very much for inviting me.
You recently published a book, which is called Mastering Domain-Driven Design.
I have it
There it
here.
is.
Also, it's a real book.
Yes.
You can buy it.
It's a real book with pages and stuff, but it also has a lot of good things in there. So tell us a little bit about why did you write this book? What does it cover? And we will talk about like 4 important steps that the book is covering. Just give us a little bit of an intro.
Yeah, also I wrote this book, to be honest, because I want to share my experience I collected over several years when I worked in software industries in quite different domains, in automotive, in insurance, etc. And I always have the feeling that it's always the same problem you have. Yeah. And therefore I wrote the book and thought, how can I get the people when they have some kind of business ideas to some kind of technical things like an API? Yeah. And so you have different steps, as you said already, 4 steps, yeah, from the very first APIs. So there's that famous sketches on a napkin. Yeah. Uh, and then you need to do it a little bit more seriously with a business model canvas and with a Wardley map. And then you have ideas, and the ideas are already prioritized. And then you need to gather business requirements, and you need to do it collaboratively because you are not alone in the world. And then you can do domain storytelling, and you can do event storming as workshop formats. And in the end, you get out a context map, and you can do context mapping, and you can see in the context map which data needs to be exchanged between the bounded contexts. And when you have the data which needs to be exchanged, then you have the APIs more or less.
Yeah, so that's a really nice overview. And as you said, right, everybody kind of has the same problem, let's say. So they have some problem of how to manage certain things and collaborate while doing that. So I think at that level, it really is the same problem. So let's just like talk a little bit in more detail about the individual steps. So your first step was like Wardley maps and business model canvas. So what is the focus of that first step?
In the end, the focus is first to get what are really my business capabilities, what I want to do in the end with my ideas, and where I get some money from. Yeah, and that is what a business model canvas can do. Also, you don't need to write 50 pages on some kind uh, of business model for the bank. You only have one sheet, and everything is in that one sheet. And using a Wardley map gives you the possibility to prioritize those capabilities so that you really know what is the core of my business and what makes a difference to my competitors. And then I can say, okay, for that, what is really important, I do the stuff afterwards so that I don't do anything and everything with all the method because it simply costs time and resources, and therefore it's important in the first steps even to prioritize.
Yeah, and I think that's a very good point, right? This idea of let's just build everything ourselves usually is not a great approach to get to
Yeah,
the finish line relatively quickly. So after you've done that, then the next step is domain storytelling in
exactly.
your kind of methodology. So what's that about?
For me, the important thing about domain storytelling is that you translate what a business expert says to you into a picture. And because you use a completely different language in the end, because it's a one is text and the other one is a picture, the business expert can visualize what you understand and can decide for himself or herself uh, if you understand her or him correctly. And because you do it in a workshop, it's quite interactive between you two, yeah, and you get really quite fast a common understanding, which is usually quite difficult to get. And you get from all the workshop attendees, you get a commitment that is exactly what we want to do.
Yeah, I think that's so important, that people that they agree on this is what we want to do, and this we all kind of understand the same thing. And the other thing I think about the domain storytelling is just that, like, these visual representations somehow are just much more compact and accessible, I think, than just reading
and even as
text.
faster as a such a workshop for middle-sized complexity project, you need 1 day. Yeah, you are 1 day with 12 people in a room, and then you have an idea of what you need to do. As
And now you have it, and
yeah,
now we're moving on to event storming. So what's
exactly.
that? How does that?
Event as event storming, domain storytelling, as the guy says, you can use only one of those. Other things you need to do first, the event storming and then the domain storytelling. I, for myself, prefer to do first the domain storytelling. And what I do additionally is that I have a so-called visual glossary. And as the name says, it's visual and is a glossary which is visual. And then I have already the terms I need to use in event storming, and therefore I use it afterwards. And in event storming, it's a technique where you try to collect as much events and ideas about the business as possible. So you create a lot of quantity first, and then you try to get quality out of it. And in the end, you get a process of business events from the very first event, as a customer comes into your shop or something like that. Yeah, bis the last step, the commodity is delivered to the customer or something like that. And then you say, okay, which data I need to for the event to do as input data, which data are created inside of the event or are changed in the event, who is doing it, and what is the command. And with that information, you have a totally nice overview what needs to be implemented as function with which data.
And then that leads us nicely to the last step of your process that you are describing in your book, which is context mapping. So how does the event storming kind of lead into that?
As the context mapping, as I tried to explain, you have the data which are changing. And usually the data which are changing are the aggregate of a bounded context. Yeah? And when you have the aggregate of the bounded context, then you can see, here is my bounded context. And now you see, because you can follow the events from left to right, as from the beginning to the end, probably other cultures will do otherwise around. I don't know, but we in Europe, we do it from left to right. And then you can see where the aggregate, where the data are changing, or where the role which is doing the event is changing. And that is a hint that there is a border of a bounded context. And you see it, you simply see it. Also it's difficult to explain, because when you see it, then you see it. Huh? And it falls out of heaven somehow. And then you can see, then you have all the bounded context, and for each bounded context you can define the events. Then you have the functionality, and because now you have along the process, you see where the bounded contexts are changing, and where you need to provide data from one bounded context to the other, and that you can visualize in a context map. And then you have your arrows, and the arrows are your APIs in the end.
And then you can do a little bit of like modern magic. So you've shown me that, and I found that quite impressive. So what is something that you do nowadays when you have these context maps, and now you're asking, it's like, well, what exactly are these APIs looking like?
Yeah, as I mean, I need to say I'm quite lazy to write code. Yeah, and no one I know want to write YAML code, yeah, for an OpenAPI specification. And therefore, I use my context map and the formerly mentioned visual glossary as a domain model, put it in some kind of LLM, and say, please create some kind of OpenAPI specification. And the specifications are really, really well. Also it's fascinating what the models these days can do. You need to work on it further, obviously. As in you need to put really good description into it, really good examples, as what the whole thing makes understandable for an external developer. But the structure is already there, and the structures are good.
I think what is fascinating in that is that, you know, what you really focus on is kind of the collaborative part of the process, right? Where it's all about, we need to find out what's actually happening, really kind of eliciting this kind of, what is it we're actually trying to accomplish? And then the rest is just like, yeah, we can use some machinery
Exactly,
for helping with that.
exactly.
So.
Also, and it's really fascinating because when you collaborate to do those things, yeah, you get from all the people in the room, you get a commitment, yeah, and say that is what we want to do, and the rest is whichever LLM tool you want to use, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. So it's not just collaboration; there also is a little bit of a kind of social cohesion that you create. You know, it's like we all agreed that this should happen. So yeah, that's quite fascinating, I have to say. I find that, and it seems to me that this is probably a little bit what the future looks like, right? We find those things that are kind of more the human problems, and then we also identify those things where we can use machinery, and then we kind of mix and match.
I think because also when you even look in the development of software development, yeah, in the very beginning, I think you too, we started to find really machine code and mnemonics, yeah, and we know every register by by the given name, yeah, and nowadays we can create really large application just by an at sign before something, yeah, and um, and that is for me the next logical step, yeah, because the creativity we still need, and we need to have creativity in a group of people, yeah, and we need those methods and those methodologies to yeah, to moderate the creativity of several people. That is what for me is a nice thing. Yeah, that you really can create creativity in a room with several people, with different perspectives, with different experience, etc.
So I think these are excellent closing words, actually, you know, because that, I think, to me, is really the essence of the book, is that we still need to work on that creative part, and then for the rest we can make sure that it gets done, but we don't need to spend as much effort on that. But for now, can you hold up your book one last time so that people get to see it? Okay, so for now, this is what we have. Check it out. It's really good. It will help you to get from business ideas to APIs quicker in a very effective way. So check it out. Thanks, Annegret, for joining and for spending time with us.
Thank you, Eric, for the interview and for the invite.
And thanks, everybody, for watching. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing. And with that, please join us next time. For today, that's it. Keep getting APIs to work. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.